Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the July 20th, 2021 Post Falls City Council meeting. Shannon, please note that all council members are present. Under announcements, we do have a couple. The Post Falls Police Department is hosting Coffee with a Cop on Wednesday, July 28th from 10 until 11:30 a.m. at Super One Foods in Post Falls. This is an opportunity for you to ask questions, voice concerns, and get to know our police department and staff. The first cup of coffee is on us and a free gun lock to everyone that stops by. And we received notice today, Kootenai County Fire and Rescue of fire restrictions now in effect. Restrictions are in effect and prohibit the following. There's no fire or charcoal except in specified developed recreation sites. No fires including charcoals, briquette barbecues. Enclosed gas, propane, or butane type camp stoves with an on-off switch are allowed. No smoking unless in an enclosed vehicle or building, or stopped in an area at least 3 feet in diameter, clear of flammable material. Remember, fireworks are not allowed in city Post Falls parks. And if there's any questions, I'd suggest you reach out to Kootenai County Fire and Rescue or Post Falls Parks Department. And then I also wanted to take a moment tonight to recognize an outstanding community member, Michaela Butler. We've talked about Michaela, and I think we met her last year. She was recently awarded the Girl Scouts Gold Award, their highest possible honor, and one that only 6% of all Girl Scouts achieve. Michaela's project to earn the Gold Award was creating and donating outdoor games to local children with cancer, giving them some much-needed fun and joy. We appreciate her and the Girl Scouts' commitment and generosity to our community. And so congratulations, Michaela, on receiving that award. Are there any amendments to the agenda tonight?
Yes, we need to take action, consent calendar, action item C, North Place East subdivision plat application off the agenda. It will come back to a future agenda.
Warren, does it make sense to address reason tonight?
Sure, we can talk about that briefly. So the item that we had on the agenda tonight was the final plat application for the North Place East subdivision, which is the last step that happens before the property is subdivided and then can be sold. Recently, the state surveyors, regulators changed an interpretation of how they're viewing what's called a lot versus a tract, which has had some knock-on effects about how you designate properties on a plat. So before we could move forward, we needed to clean up the language so that it complies with our code as well as meeting the changes coming from the state. So we're meeting with the county next week, the county surveyor, to talk about how best to proceed. And it's not just us, it's Hayden, Coeur d'Alene. I spoke with both of them today. They're in this, have the same issues that we're going to wrestle with for the next little while we work through what it means to be a lot versus what it means to be a tract.
Unfortunately, Warren just became aware of it about 11:30 today, and this was on the agenda, and so Shelley had asked, could we just go ahead with this on the consent calendar, and if approved, just withhold my signature until it's addressed. It doesn't work, because once we hear back from the county, from the state, the documentation, the verbiage has to be changed. We'd have to go back and get the signatures anyway. So this is something that we were just made aware of. It's not the doing of the city, but unfortunately it's causing some issues, so that's purpose for tonight. That being said, I would entertain a motion.
I would move to remove item C, North Place East subdivision plat application from the consent calendar.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, Warren, for the explanation. Are there any declarations of conflict, ex parte contacts, or site visits? Seeing none, would you please present the consent calendar?
Item A is payables June 29th through July 12th, 2021. And item B is request to surplus City Hall gym equipment.
Any questions?
I'd move to approve the consent calendar as amended.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Thorson.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Tonight, we do have 2 public hearings. I know a lot of people are here to speak. If you do wish to speak, there's a form on the dias in the back. Please fill it out, sign it, turn it into our clerk, and we will call you at the appropriate time. We'll give you 4 minutes to speak. I would ask that we follow the proper decorum. We've had public hearings where people call out from the audience, which doesn't work. So please, if you have something to say it at the microphone. That way we have a recording of it as well. Also, please keep your comments pertinent to the topic at hand. Again, very recently, we've had people come up and make comments, et cetera, that had nothing to do with the item we're talking about. So just please keep them pertinent, and we'll listen to you respectfully, and we'll go forward. So with that, the first public hearing tonight is the Colca and Kelly annexation. With that, I'll open the public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor Jacobson, Council President Wilhelm, and members of City Council. John Manley, Planning Manager here. As mentioned, introducing the Colca Kelly annexation, case file ANNX 6/2021. The owners are a combined of Colca Land LLC and Jim Kelly at 108 East 16th Avenue. The applicant on this was Dobler Engineering. Gordon couldn't make it this evening. He has asked Drew. Drew will be filling in for Gordon. Drew Dittmans with Lake City Engineering. So the request is for approval to annex approximately 18 acres with the zoning designation of single-family residential R1. The location of this is, as you see here, just the southwest corner of Grange and McGuire. And you have some large single-family lots within Kootenai County, mostly around the northwest and south of that, with R1S properties to the east on McGuire. So the current land use on this is large lot residential homes in Kootenai County. I'm going to qualify the next one. The physical characteristic, no significant topography or vegetation. As part of the Planning and Zoning Commission, there was some discussion on the trees that are out there, and I'll kind of show that on the next slide. The City of Post Falls, when we look at this as a staff, we don't have a tree preservation ordinance or anything in code that maintains either payment or fee in lieu of when you take a tree down or to preserve trees. So being the fact that that's not in existence, oftentimes what we look at is any of the vegetation impede development. And so when staff looked at this, we saw that there was no significant topography or vegetation matters on the site. The next slides, I'll kind of show those trees. The water provider, East Green Acres, with a sewer to be provided by the City of Post Falls. So what I did is post the P&Z meeting, went out and actually took a little bit more time looking at these trees as part of this public hearing. This is looking this way. You do see along the perimeter of these lots, there is some pre-existing trees along the lot lines, as well as some trees scattered amongst the lands at this area, with predominant open field south of the home site. Looking a little bit against the house and structure, you see some additional trees and some evergreen trees next to that residence. Looking down the road, you see trees that are along the existing improved road of Grange Avenue. A little bit further west on Grange, you see there's some additional trees there, all of which none would impede development of this. Looking, this is further to the west on the site on that Colca land property. You see mostly filled with some trees and shrubbery off at the distance. Looking here at the intersection of Grange to the southwest, you see the home site with some trees that are near that home site as well. More on the southeasterly corner, looking to the northwest, once again you see that the trees around that home site at that location. So just wanted to put some time deserved on some comments that was meant at P&Z and would bring them forward as part of this public hearing. Another matter at hand was this, from the city staff's consideration, would be an improved road. It's about 26 feet wide. It's not gravel, so from a city staff standard, it's currently an improved road. If at time of development, this would be improved to a local residential road with sidewalk. When the areas abutting this development would get sidewalks, swell and curbing, and street trees. So here's the R1S that I inferred to, then the city of Post Falls to the east, and then the proposed site there in the hatch. So the Planning and Zoning Commission looked at the zone change criteria in their recommendation for R1. They're looking, is it consistent with the future land use map? Is it consistent with goals and policies found in the comprehensive plan? And they're looking at, is the proposed zoning consistent with street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, and community plans, as well as other natural geographic features. You see here, it's in the blue area. It's that transitional area on the land use map. The reason for the blue and the transitional is when we did the future land use planning on this, we knew that in time, potentially, you would get development on Pleasant View Road to the west. Depending on the intensity of that and how it transitions and this area slowly infills over time, whatever we colored this, more than likely would be wrong, and we'd be processing a bunch of amendments. So the idea was to call it transitional, and we'd have guiding policies to help guide the direction of annexations.
John, quick question
Yes.
back on that slide. All the blue and all the, I guess it's pink or purple, are county property at this point?
Yes, that would be true.
Thank you.
So here's the purpose of that transitional here. It's, this is where it acknowledges that the timing of growth is undetermined and that the guidance is found here. The items to highlight, which I have over here underlined, are parts of this in smaller font. I have it in larger font here off to the right, is portions expected to develop as future residential. So staff and the community saw that we could see residential asks in the future. Mixed residential is envisioned between McGuire Road and Corbin Road with higher densities near commercial corridors and arterials. So it acknowledged, depending on potential uses and how it develops, you'd get the higher densities near other commercial users, creating that buffer within the built environment. The comp plan goals: grow and sustain a balanced, resilient economy for Post Falls, providing community prosperity and fiscal health. Plan for and establish types of quantities of land uses in Post Falls, supporting community needs and city's long-term sustainability. Protect and maintain Post Falls natural resources, including clean air, soils, river and aquifer, minimizing light and noise pollution. Kind of discuss on this a bit. Currently, a large portion, about 50% of Post Falls, is R1. So, you get your new businesses, development, and then demands. R1 is that niche that's often sought at as meeting that market niche for the general public. Diversification of land use is also important. Bringing lands that are actually in the county into the city and getting them off the aquifer provides some environmental benefits as well. I believe in the staff report you saw Panhandle Health District support the annexation along those measures as well. Support land use patterns that maintain and enhance community levels of service. Oftentimes this is handled at the time of permit issuance through impact fees. They pay for public safety, parks and streets, and mitigate their impact. So growth pays for growth through development. Foster the long-term fiscal health of the community. That's looking at on this aspect, is that diversified housing product. Maintain and enhance residential quality of life. We'll jump to this slide here. Just off to the east, there are a couple parks. So on the site east of McGuire, you have, if you were to take Grange, a park about a half mile away, and you have a park just about 0.2 miles, the Beck Park. So there's two city parks in a fairly close proximity to this potential site. Additionally, if you look at potential intersections, if you're a commuter and you're going to work, You have less than 2 miles away, you have access to 53, of which is planned to have an upgrade and an interchange in the somewhat near future. You also have at 2 miles away a Pleasant View interchange, which allows commuters, if you're going to Coeur d'Alene or to Spokane, to have access via vehicular way fairly convenient. So it has a potential, what?
Excuse me, go ahead, Linda.
I'm sorry, John, to interrupt. Can you go back to that map one more time? Put the little cursor thing on Pleasant View Road and then just move it up to the north. Just go up to the north, kind of parallel to the piece of property that we're talking about right there. Okay, okay. So, because when we're looking at this little map that you had before and talking about, well, I'll ask you later, but okay, go ahead. Anyway, sorry. I see.
So all these comp plan goals and policies, the intent of it is, if you were to annex and you were developed, you want well-designed development, that it would be an asset to the community. This is a lot of goal, policy 2 implements a lot of the similar stuff that's already been stated. Policy 15, looking at ensuring adequate land is available for future housing needs, helping serve residents of all ages, incomes, and abilities. R1 probably does this, fairly equitable. Some could argue maybe the higher densities do it as well, but and there you see there the 48% of the city at the time of this was zoned R1. The other 3 zone change criteria, looking at commercial and high-density residential zoning, is typically assigned along streets with higher road classifications. At this location, and with looking at the surrounding development, even though McGuire is an arterial road, wouldn't make sense at this location for R3 or R2. There's nothing near it. There's no commercial near it. Even though there's a commercial node that's specified, it's not in existence of today. So looking at this, one could argue that that wouldn't be appropriate. Then you look at the next one, limited or neighborhood commercial or lower density residential zoning is typically assigned for properties as they proceed further away from higher intense urban areas. So Celtice Way is fairly far away. I mean, would be considered a quarter-mile ped shed is what's usually within walking distance, and that's significantly further than a quarter mile. So that would lend itself to your lower densities, and R1 would be considered a lower density housing product. The next one deals with industrial zoning, which they're not asking for at this time. Here's the agencies that were notified. Here's the comments. The police department remained neutral. Fire remained neutral. DEQ, they had more construction-related comments at time of development. Kootenai County had no comments, and then Panhandle Health, as mentioned, supported it. Now, looking at the annexations, you're looking at a lot of times on the annexation of the goals and policies, and that's kind of guides the annexation aspect of it. Zone change, part of it, we have the criteria, and that's kind of why the Planning and Zoning Commission looked at the criteria and found that it met. So it's balancing the goals and policies in the comp plan with the review criteria and the recommended zone change. Any comments and questions?
Questions of John? Linda, go
Now I
ahead.
do. Okay, so John, and I'm sure that you remember this. Years ago, when the Prairie Meadows subdivision came in and the Meadows subdivision came in, we had long discussions about going that far north and leaving those lots larger in the R1S zone. And I understand that Prairie Meadows turned out to be a PUD, so they got a little bit smaller lots, but a lot of those are half acre, 3/4 of an acre, and an acre. And so what has changed? I mean, what has changed since we talked about that?
Well, one thing that did change, I mean, that had a different comp plan that was governing decisions at that time versus the new comp plan. The other thing is market demands and desires, and the cost of infrastructure and labor is different. So I would argue that this product, if it was proposed today, more than likely wouldn't occur on a lot of variables because the time's different 20 years later than when this was conceived. Additionally, some of the road networks and some of the cross sections were of a lesser cost to facilitate some of these larger lots. So that would be my guess. And so now you, because of cost of land's a bit of higher, cost of materials higher, cost of labor's higher, you're seeing a change even in demographic demands for housing product, modifying a lot of requests.
Well, okay.
You okay? Al?
So John, whenever we consider an annexation, I guess the first thing that comes to my mind is, what in your mind as a planner is the key benefit for us to bring this into the city? How does it really make the city better?
To me, it's going to be my opinion, and that's it.
All I'm asking.
At this location, you're looking at, we have annexed industrial lands at Pleasantview. We have a technology mix park. We have an partially empty Riverbend Commerce Park. We desire to create jobs in the area. And in order to create jobs, there's housing needs as well. Same, I'll couple that with land consumption. If you make 21 acre lots, you've consumed 20 acres on the prairie. So there's a balance between land consumption and providing the housing needs for the general public. So looking at this location and in the parks nearby, and I don't know how far this trail may be vacated. I don't know to what extent. I do know this railroad to the northeast isn't going to go anywhere, but there's a potential. Maybe you can get access to multi-use trails and get more walkability down the road through continued development.
Okay. Thank you.
Steve?
John, I got a question for you. On Grange Avenue, on the annexation, there's an island there. So if the development did come in, they would have to improve their two sections of that, but where that little island is, would that remain an unimproved section on Grange?
This would remain unimproved.
So
You'd end up with improved, because they do improvements adjacent to their subdivision.
Okay.
So if at such time this ever did get a change of use or do any sort of land use action on it, you'd get it at that time.
Okay. But under this plan, it would be improved then, kind of remain the way it is and then improved.
Yeah, and you saw in the staff report, engineering didn't see any traffic issues with this road. You'd get improvements in that this 26 feet could still satisfy the east-west traffic along that corridor.
Okay. Thank you.
Vehicular traffic.
Okay.
Any questions, Joe?
But you have a gap in the sidewalk and,
You would have a gap in the sidewalk and
And
swells
swale.
and street trees.
okay, and curbing. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Does the applicant wish to speak?
Good evening, Mayor, Councilors. Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering. As John had indicated, I'm pinch hitting for Gordon tonight. He was double booked, so he called me in a scramble last minute and asked me to fill in for him. So I'm going to do the best I can running through his presentation here. So Colca Kelly annexation, as John had indicated, there's 3 separate parcels, total of 18 acres, asking for R1 zoning. It is transitional, as John had discussed. It's on the edge of the transitional comp plan designation. That is for assigned to lands that are suitable for growth, but the time frame is undetermined, as John had discussed. Well, what determines that time frame? Well, it's the availability of infrastructure. It's the availability of sewer, water, streets. Some of it's market demand. Some of it's what's the surrounding area. So being on the edge of that transition area adjacent to existing residential, this seems to be a good fit for that. The R1 zoning designation also does fit within that transitional designation, as well as that West Prairie focus area. John had shown this map again. This is your current zoning map. The light yellow is the R1S Meadows, Prairie Meadows stuff. The little red star you can see there in the corner is the subject property. The darker yellow is all R1. Schools, Gordon had asked that I bring up schools because I think that was brought up in the P&Z meeting. Although annexations themselves don't create the impact to schools, the subdivision does. There's been studies by the Urban Land Institute that suggest that a single-family residential lot generates about 0.6 school-age children, K through 12 school-age children per lot. There are, you can see there, those are the schools that are in the surrounding area. Again, that red star is the project location. The blue star just north of that is the property that the school district currently owns for the future high school and middle school there. So it's in close proximity to that as well. Utilities, the property is served by East Green Acres Irrigation District for water. They have a large diameter trunk main that runs in McGuire. They don't have any capacity issues. They will be able to service the project. Sewer will be the city of Post Falls. Staff has indicated in the staff report that there shouldn't be any issues with capacity from sewer. There were some topographic issues and some grades. We're confident we can work that out with Rob and Bill during design to handle those issues. There are dry utilities available in McGuire as well. Transportation, so this is an excerpt from your transportation map. Again, the red star is the site there. McGuire Road is designated as a minor arterial. Minor arterials, and this again is in your staff report, can handle up to 15,000 vehicle trips per day. Rob can correct me, but we're under, I think, 4,000. I think he wrote in the staff report trips per day on that road now. So there's substantial capacity left in that road. We will be required to dedicate additional right-of-way on McGuire and do upgrades to the road as well to meet the city's transportation master plan. And that will include some pedestrian facilities, some pedestrian access. So that the blue arrows in this drawing represent pedestrian facilities. The red arrows would represent potential access sites to the property. So we will be required to build a 10-foot multi-use trail on our side of McGuire, as well as sidewalks and pedestrian facilities on Grange. And as Councilor, I think Borders had asked, or maybe it was Anthony asked, that middle piece, we won't be improving that because the city won't have the right of way to do that, and that property will still be in the county, so we don't have the right to build stuff in front of their property. Grange is considered a local street, so that will again require additional right-of-way dedication and be upgraded to local street standards. Gordon did ask me to point out, because I think it was brought up again at the P&Z meeting, about pedestrian access to the parks, and I've got a map too, and I know John showed one about parks that are over in the Prairie Meadows and Meadows subdivision. And we can certainly work with the engineering staff on a potential crosswalk at Grange and McGuire. The applicant is willing to do that, to work with the city to get a crosswalk in that area so that pedestrian traffic can get over and access those park facilities. This park map, John showed a similar map and did talk about the fact that there are 5 parks within a 1-mile radius of this site, so there's plenty of availability for parks. I think the rest of this from Gordon's presentation was all comprehensive plan stuff. John has discussed that. It's in your staff report. It's in the project narrative submittals that were submitted, so I don't want to go through that again. I did want to address Councilor Wilhelm's comment about Prairie Meadows and the Meadows, and I think you were a counselor when I brought that forward to the city 20 years ago. 19 years ago, it was a long time ago. So I'm familiar with that. I did that. And when you asked that question, I wrote down 2 things, and they were identical to John's answers. It was market demand and cost. And those were the 2 big reasons, I think, why you're not seeing more of the R1S bigger type developments. So I think John answered that in the same way that I would have answered that. I think that covers everything I needed to discuss. So I'll
Any questions, Mr. Dimmitt?
happy to answer questions.
Go ahead, Al.
I just got one question. Either Drew can answer this or John, but when you guys draw the map and you got the parks in there, You can go back to that one if you want, but it doesn't
Park
matter.
one? Oops, that-
I guess the thing that bothers me is that we use like as the crow flies, it's 0.6 miles from the property to a park, but kids don't fly. They have to cross the road and they have to walk down, I mean, across and up and around, and, you know, it's not 0.6 miles from any property on that annexation.
So, and John, I don't have the distance on it, but I think John said it was 0.2 miles to the park in Prairie Meadows, the big park. And yes, that is as the crow flies, but, and this really doesn't show it, but here is Howell Road right here, and that park is just off the edge of the map to Howell Road. So yes, pedestrian traffic would theoretically have to go up to Grange to cross down. Now, we can certainly work with the engineering staff if they're interested in putting a pedestrian crosswalk at McGuire and Howell. I don't think that's out of the question from our side, so we could certainly work with Bill and Rob on that. That provides a much more direct route to those parks.
I live out there, so I'm very familiar with that particular area, and there's no access. I mean, you have to go all the way down Fisher or whatever to get to the park. I mean, so you answered my question. I'm good.
Steve?
Yeah, I guess, Drew, the arrows then, the two, those will be the roads that'll exit the subdivision?
So I haven't seen a subdivision plan. Again, I'm one day into this.
Oh, okay.
But yes, I mean, I've been doing this for a while. That's where you would put access roads. The way the property is configured dimensionally, that would make sense. You're going to have one accessing Grange, and you're going to have a second access on McGuire. And it would obviously have to meet spacing distances somewhere between Grange and Howell. You know, engineering's got their spacing requirements. We'd have to meet that. But yes, that's where you would most likely see access points.
Two on McGuire and one on Grange then? That was the sense.
You'd have one, so the red ones would be the actual streets that would come in. The blue one that you see in the bottom down here, I should have brought that up, thanks for bringing that up, this one. Gordon told me that he's got a mid-block pedestrian access from internal the subdivision through where the sewer would come into the project. There's gonna be an open space tract there, and so there'd be a trail over that to allow pedestrians from inside the subdivision to get access to that multi-path trail on McGuire.
So that's
But it would not be a vehicular access, it would be a pedestrian access.
Pedestrian access only. then.
The red ones would be for
The two roads,
vehicles.
there'll be
Yep.
two roads then, okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys, appreciate it.
Shannon?
I wanted to clarify
Sorry.
Mr. Wolf's comment on the as the crow fly comment.
Thanks, John.
I thought you were going to talk about whether or not kids fly.
That depends. There it is. So I created this exhibit. So when I created it, it looks like as the crow fly, but I actually measured from this intersection using a mile marker down Grange to the northwest corner of that as being 0.6 or 0.5 miles. Similarly, on Howell, I measured just from here to the southwest corner for that 0.18 measurement. The 0.6 miles, I went along Howell down here over into that point there. So that was along the street corridor. So yes, the map does look like that. It was just a quick and dirty way for me to do a measurement for the exhibit.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I usually give a disclaimer, and I'm going to do it again. If I butcher your name, please forgive me. It's not intentional. Sometimes I have a hard time reading, and sometimes I just don't pronounce them right. So, neutral, wishing to speak, Angela Adams. And again, when you come up, name for the record, name and address, please. And if you look at the timer here, you've got 4 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Angela Adams. I live at 2534 West Grange Avenue. I'm that little portion of land you see that is not included in the subdivision. I am neutral on this. When I moved in there, did I say, hey, I wish they'd build 50 homes surrounding all 3 sides of my house? No. But I looked it up, and I knew that the properties were owned by investors. They were rentals. I knew it's only going to be a matter of time. So I am not against the development, but I do not feel that R1 is the best choice here. I think R1S would be a better solution. The diversity and the culture that these prairie properties offer are vital to our community. And it is gobbling up the prairie land, and we're putting in these subdivisions, but we're not maintaining that rural farm life that the R1S would do that, such as Dalton Gardens. When you're taking away these lands, you're taking away properties where children raise their 4-H animals. Not just the kids that live there, but their friends that live in subdivisions. You are taking away property where people have cows, chickens, pigs, because it's a cost-effective way for them to feed their family. There's properties out there where the alfalfa's been grown for generations to feed these animals. We also have farm to table on McGuire Road. We have a gentleman that grows corn and sells it to Super One. So if you vote yes for this, I'm asking that you wholeheartedly and with 100% sincerity believe that this is undisputably the absolute best use for this land, that R1S would not be better. And I'm sorry, but I get very emotional about this because I'd like to share with you how my family's been treated during this process. In April, I had someone randomly stop by my home during a world pandemic when we're told to isolate and ask, hey, will you sell your house because I have a developer that wants to build a subdivision. There's nothing wrong with asking if I want to sell, but you're going to come to my house during a world pandemic when I'm home with my 2 small children. I let them know that we bought that property to raise our kids, retire on that property, and deed back to our children. But if there was an offer that we could not refuse, we would certainly consider it. About 3 weeks later, my children are yelling and screaming, come to the living room, come to the living room. They're terrified. I look out in my back field, there's about 4 or 5 men walking towards our home. I've lived here for almost 50 years. I'm not accustomed to people trespassing on my property. It scared my children. The only thing that scared them more was in December of that same year, last year. We come home, and in our fenced backyard, there's survey markers. We check our surveillance video. There's 2 men in our backyard. They're walking up on our deck, looking in our window, looking like they're casing the joint. I get the name of the survey company. I call them 3 times and ask, did you have someone in our neighborhood at this day? No response. I text them, I'm going to make a sheriff report. These people will be charged with trespassing. I get a call within 10 minutes from Dobler Engineering. Ask my name, ask my address. I tell him this is the Adams property, and he says, oh yes, we have permission to be there from the developer. You don't need permission from the developer to be on my property. You need my permission to be there. After that, our neighbors tell us that they have a new landlord. It's the developer. And he said, we are ridiculous people, and we want a ridiculous price for our property. We've never even talked about a price. Then he says, you're dumb not to sell to me because you're not using it. We farm that land. Agriculture is a use. We did get an offer in April. They contacted us. We said, submit to our realtor. We got backlash. You have a realtor? And
Finish up, please.
when they did that, they submitted the offer to us that it had their agent double-signing it. My family has been slandered, harassed, and ridiculed because we want to live on the property that we bought to raise our children, retire, and deed to our children.
Thank you,
So,
ma'am. Time's up, but thank you for your
Thank you.
comments. Appreciate it. In opposition, not wishing to speak, Harlan Schlenker. Why are you not developing infill properties before annexing in more? Can you guarantee that if approved, it will not be rezoned? Does mayor and council live near any of these annexations? Not wishing to speak in opposition, Joe Melendreas? Dreris? Thank you. In complete opposition to annexation for this project or any other in our county. Please keep our rural way of life respected. Not wishing to speak in opposition, Sally and Kevin Posas. Please see the attached. Dear council members, I wish to have this written statement serve as my non-approval of the planned annexation of the Kulka Kelly property located at Grange Avenue and McGuire. I am a resident of the Meadows development located directly to the east of the proposed development. The overbuilding of homes, which is planned by requesting zoning changes, does not fit in with the existing homes and rural country living feel, nor does it bring anything positive to the area. It does create more traffic using Grange Avenue to shortcut through to Chase Road and Spokane Street. The 25-mile-per-hour speed limit signs are ignored, as are the stop signs at Howell and Grange. Grange has a marked painted bike path area through the meadows, and with the speeds of the through traffic, I feel it is unsafe to use. The speeding through traffic on Grange Avenue became a big issue after the zoning change, annexation, and PUD that allowed the Meadow Grove development to be built on what was 20 acres of R1S. Councilman Alan Wolf graciously met with some concerned Post Falls residents a few months ago and admitted they had made a mistake approving the changes that allowed the Meadow Grove to be built, ultimately with 74 homes. Please don't allow other mistakes to be made at the other end of Grange. Wishing to speak in opposition, Donald Judd.
My name's Don Judd. I live at 2864 West Grange Avenue. I'm the property I live on and farm the property directly west of this subdivision proposal. And I appreciate the council's concerns relative to zoning. We have expressed how much we believe that the R1S is the appropriate zoning, given the fact that what you're surrounded by here is R1S and 5-acre parcels that are individually owned and have been for generations. The other concern is traffic on Grange. One of the things that we trust the council will be considerate of is the lifestyle of the people who live not just in the city, but in the areas that you're proposing to annex. That road was neither designed nor constructed for high-use traffic. And as you saw from one of the maps, there is a significant bottleneck in front of the property that didn't sell. That is completely inappropriate. I'm not, nor do I know anybody who believes that we can stop development. We don't propose that that's the case. But this should be reconsidered for appropriate zoning consistent with what's already been there and the precedents that have been set, and that the access should be redesigned. The street, if you look at the proposal, the card that was sent out by the city, you'll see that the north-south street on the east side of the property is a dead end. And yet the north-south street further into Grange goes out onto Grange into this area where 200 feet, 300 not, and then another 300 feet to McGuire. It's not in anybody's best interest except people who are looking for a space to put workforce. And if there is not enough space for a workforce for this community, but north on the prairie as it develops, this is not the answer. And I hope seriously that you'll look at the plat that's been proposed. The other thing that I need you to notice is that a plat plan of this property was given to East Green Acres months ago, long before any public hearings. The question becomes, who in the city administration is committing to a developer that a proposal like this, and its annexation, will move forward such that they can afford to and begin the work of developing that property and working on the utilities with the local utility providers. Most authorities are required to make those decisions after they've heard input and not prior.
I will assure you that no decisions have been made, no approval has been given. If anything moves forward, it will be decided by this council tonight, and nothing has transpired prior to. So I don't know what you're hearing or who you're hearing it from, but there is nobody in the administration up here that have approved it. Mr. Wilson.
I can speak to that a little bit. So tonight's hearing is on whether or not the property should be annexed, and if it's annexed, what's the appropriate zoning. The subdivision of the property is not on the agenda for tonight. That would go in front of the Planning Commission. As part of the application for the subdivision, we require the applicant to be able to establish that they have water service and that they have sewer service, utility services. So it's not unusual as they're preparing their application, if the city isn't the provider of the utilities, that they go speak with that provider and they get what's called a provisional will serve letter that says, we know that you're going to develop 15 homes, 20 homes, 30 homes, whatever that number is, and we have capacity to give you the water that you need. And we do that so that when the decision makers, be it the Planning Commission or the City Council, is considering whether or not to approve that development, they have the information they need to know that it can be served and can be developed.
But again, no decision
But
has
no
been made.
decision
No
is made.
approval
It's
has been
just
given.
part of their application process to show that they have the
Thank you.
ability to get the utilities that they need.
I
Thank you.
appreciate the concern.
You bet. Next up, wishing to speak in opposition, that's a hard word for me to say tonight, Steve Clevenger.
My name is Steve Clevenger. We live at 2357 West Grange. That's the Grange House, as you may know that. And I will be very brief in my comments, and that is that, as you've seen on the map there, the surrounding area to the east of Grange is R1S, and to the west, that's predominantly rural with much larger lots. So I feel very strongly that a designation of R1 is not appropriate for that area, and I would respectfully ask that if you go ahead with the approval, that you approve R1S. I think it's much more compatible and much more suitable to the area. So, thank you.
Thanks, sir. Wishing to speak in opposition, Bob Flowers.
Bob Flowers, 3914 East Maplewood. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. I guess my main point is there's no laws, there's no regulations, there's no anything that says you have to annex this piece of property in tonight. It's some nice farmland. It's sitting right in Apache County. It backs, well, it's to the west side of the meadows and that. But how many houses do you really need out there? I mean, we've seen Green Acres have problems with their water system because of this heat wave that we've been experiencing.
Let me, go ahead, I'll ask the question when you're done.
Okay, and I guess what I'm trying to basically get at is that right now, we really don't need to annex any more property into this city. We need to take care of what we already have. And maybe look at some of these infill areas. This thing's surrounded, three-quarters of it or three sides of it by the county. We have other properties around here. We don't have to bring it in. Now is not the time. We need to take care of this city. We got our own problems with the roads and with the sewers and everything else that goes on right now without bringing in more. More people, more problems, more cars. We don't need it. That's all I'm asking you to look at.
Ms. Flowers, I'm on East Green Acres.
I'm sorry.
I am on East Green Acres for water.
Yes, sir.
Domestic and irrigation. I've had no issues. So who have you talked to that said they had problems?
It was in the Coeur d'Alene Press.
There was an article in there that they were pumping more than usual, but I didn't see
800 versus...
But I don't think they said it was an issue. They still had the capacity. So I just wanted to clarify, because I know I'm on it and I've not had an issue.
Crown Point, water restrictions.
Yes.
Excuse me, folks.
No comments from the audience, but
No, but...
I'm just curious, because I've not heard anything from it.
Yes, and it was announced in the paper. They were pumping 800 versus
They were
500.
pumping a lot more than usual, I know that.
And their pumps were fixing to fail. Thank you.
Okay. Interesting. Wishing to speak in opposition, Jeff Adams.
It's interesting. His wife was he's opposed.
Hi, my name's Jeff Adams, and I live at 2534 West Grange Avenue. And I guess my question is, I would like to understand how this application for annexation has made it this far with all the mistakes in this process. I mean, almost every third page, 3 out of the 4 pictures, when it talks about what you're looking at, doesn't match. Under the infrastructure and service plans, for staff comment, says sanitary sewer to serve the site is located at the southeast corner of the property in the intersection of Howell Road and Grange Avenue. Those are both east-west roads. There's no intersection there. And it says here that West Hargrave Avenue, the undeveloped portion lying adjacent to the subject's property's southern boundary, should also be part of the annexation. Well, Hargrave Avenue does not run along their southern boundary. It doesn't touch their property at all. Under Dobler Engineering's annexation narrative, it doesn't list all the parcels that are being up for annexation. And under, GO2, annexation and development of the property will result in the widening and improvement of Prairie Avenue along the property frontage. GO5, the property accessed Prairie Avenue directly and therefore is easily accessible for law enforcement and emergency services. GO6, properties along roadways bear the cost of bringing the abutting transportation corridor up to standard. In this case, widening of Prairie Avenue to its ultimate width, insulation and curbing, paths, lighting, and landscaping. So, with that being said, all of these mistakes were not corrected by the planning department, by the engineering firm, didn't get caught by planning and zoning commission. So I question if anybody is reviewing any of this information that is being presented here. And I don't have a very good feeling about this annexation and development. If all of the easy mistakes are not being corrected and fixed, how do I know that the houses are going to be built to standards? How do I know the roads and the sewers are going to be built to code? Because nobody's watching and nobody's paying attention and everybody's making mistakes. Is this what we're going to be left with? And being that I am in the heart of this development, this is what I get to look at every day. And like I said, I don't know how, going forward, if they can't do the easy mistakes, how they're going to get the harder ones. So I guess this is a question for the city, if this is what you were looking for in the city, is this kind of workmanship. So that's it.
Thanks, sir. Wishing to speak in opposition, William Fuller.
Good evening. My name is William Fuller. I live at 3235 North McGuire. That's the northwest corner of McGuire and Grange. Mr. Mayor, City Council, I'm opposed to the R1 designation bringing that many people into this neighborhood, and I would support, as many other people have, the R1S designation with lower density, as it keeps more in line with the character of the neighborhood. I would also like to address you from the advantage of a little bit of age. I remember back 70 years when in another state the same issues were coming up before city councils. This was in California between San Diego County, Orange County, and parts of Los Angeles County, the Los Angeles to San Diego corridor. Following World War II and the Korean conflict, there was pressure to add more and more people into the area. More people were flooding into Southern California to live. Former sailors, soldiers, airmen. And the city councils there started the same process that you ladies and gentlemen are doing today, looking at what's best for the city and how are we going to expand in a rational way that will maintain the character of the community. And this was in the 1950s, 1960s, what we see initially was a gradual infill like you're being faced with today. Unfortunately, that continued without abatement, and what we have now is wall-to-wall concrete and freeways from Los Angeles City to the city of San Diego and south, almost to the Mexican border. Continuous cities, one after the other, what's now called a megalopolis. No community, there's parks, there's very few open spaces. The orange orchards in Orange County are no more. The open fields in San Diego County are very sparse. It's wall-to-wall people. And I would ask, is this what you're looking for? I don't think it is. I suspect you don't think it is. But I would say, think very long and hard about the path you're walking down. If you go with R1, you're just one little step further to a more dense population. If you go with R1S, at least you're taking a half step backwards so that you don't have the same population density, and you'll maintain a little bit more of the characteristics that make this area so desirable. We live on a 2.5 acre lot. We bought it for that reason, because it was that size. And to see it go down, to see the area into 6,500 square foot lots, which is what we came from, saddens us. We like the 1/2 acre to 2 acre size. And I would strongly urge you to take a look at the R1S designation, and we're not opposed to development. It's just the way it is handled. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. In opposition, wishing to speak, is it Pete Haynes?
Good evening. I'm Peter Hanos. I live on 2984 West Grange, down the street from where the development is. The main thing we're talking about, and we were told earlier on, that this is, you're looking at this to see that we maintain and enhance community services. Well, to start off, because of development in the area, at my house on Grange, I have lost community service due to even the Polo Green area adding on. My internet I pay for is anywhere from to be 3.65 to 6 megabytes per second. I did a speed test before I came. It's at 0.98 to download and 0.15. That's point, not 5.1. So you've actually taken my ability to use the internet away. When my daughter was home during college due to the COVID thing, she could hardly use the internet to do her Zoom calls into school, into the college. And if you're not going to check this type of thing when you put developments in for the community enhancement of services, which obviously you haven't, this is what's going to happen. And none of this was checked before. I mentioned it at the hearing when we talked about the zoning change, and glossed right over it, said you can get internet from anywhere. No, I cannot. This is the only internet I can get through Ziply, and unless I use satellite, which is actually worse. Sometimes you don't get it if it's a cloudy day. And that's because of city development that has caused my area where I live to get worse, not enhanced, as we talked about and was brought up earlier. The bottleneck on Grange, we're talking about developing and enhancing. Now you're going to put up to half of the cars that are going to be out of this area. That would be about 90 cars onto Grange. This is a narrow road. This is, yes, not gravel, but this is chip sealed. This is not paved. It's not improved to this standard. The standard for 90 more cars, or 180, depending on which direction these people leave their homes, is a problem. You talk about an arterial on McGuire being really able to handle all this traffic with no problem at all. It's a nice road that only takes 4,000 people a day. The children that will be riding their bicycles 0.2 and 0.6 miles across this 4,000 traveled cars a day with no intersection is not a good idea. They're not going to put a park in this area, so they're going to go to those parks. They're going to ride their bicycles across McGuire, and you're going to have a challenged problem with kids. Now, when you piecemeal sections of the city out of the county back and forth, there's a direct line where the county is and the city is. We have that right now in McGuire. When you take a chunk out of this little piece out of the county and throw it into the city, now the police are called. Who's coming? Who's going to come to the lady's house that lives in the middle? No one's going to know. They're going to be back and forth. No, that's city. No, that's county. I know, because I lived in the same situation on Syringa years ago. And yeah, it is a problem. And so, yeah, sometimes you get nobody coming for a while, then you get everybody coming for a while. If you're going to allow development, as I've seen in other areas where, let's say, on Pole Line in Idaho, houses are being developed, were developed there, they're allowed to be built with no foundations. That was a long time ago. That's what I was told last time when I brought this up. Right, and so now on Chase and Grange, not last year, but a year and a half ago.
Time's up, sir.
Well, I had a lot more other things to say. It's a good thing I had time's up, because we could have gone over a lot more that were not in good situation for
Thanks,
this.
sir. Wishing to speak in opposition, Jacqueline Melendreras? Was I close? I'm sorry, ma'am, do you have one to turn in?
Yes. Could I take it?
It's got to be turned in over here. Can we still accept that, Warren?
Sure.
Okay.
Just a question.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you. Was I close on your name?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jacqueline Melendreras. I live off of McGuire on Fisher Avenue. I need agricultural zoning to stay in place. I live on an apple orchard and a chicken farm. My neighbor behind me grows corn for a local supermarket. Neighbor next to me hay his field, and the other side and behind me has horses and mules. Rezoning would devastate our way of life. We need to keep agricultural zoning. Half a mile down Prairie Avenue at Crown Point subdivision, I have a friend. Her daytime water restrictions are in place with no lawn watering. Also, her water pressure is way down. Packing homes side by side in the county is not sustainable, and we do not have the infrastructure in place. All of us that own acreage are responsible for our own septic systems. We pay to install them and to maintain them. Where am I? And to maintain. Without the burden of taxing the community or putting a greater demand on the existing sewage plant. Crown Point is proof of careless planning and zoning changes. When I drive home every day on Southeast and turn on McGuire, that sewage smell stench is overwhelming. And it happens to me every day. Post-fall sewage plant can't even keep up with the overload of existing homes. City council members, please do not let the other errors that were done in the past, now we're reaping the benefits to see what we could improve, what to change, how to improve on what is being asked of you instead of chopping up our land. Because just looking at this mailer of Jeff and Angela, just, I can't believe it. How would you like to live in the middle? So you have surrounded on both sides and the back. And with the math here, it's got the potential of 90 homes, not 45, what this little thing, it says. Just a little example of possible development. No, the math you read here, 18 acres, 5 units per acre, that's a possibility of 90 homes. Okay. And they just built their brand-new home. They haven't even finished landscaping it. So they have to deal with this now. And I'm in the process of putting cabinets in my home, and I got to deal with all this stuff too. So what a tragic scenario to live here. And this is each and every one of us that have land here that we have to deal with. So what I think of Colca and Kelly, I don't feel you get to flip our agricultural way of life to a packed city living. You come from Las Vegas and bring Las Vegas mentality here. You need to stay in the city limits. Don't try to flip my farm and country way of life. City Council, we purchased in the county with established neighborhoods of 5-acre pieces. No one's giving us anything. They're just taking it away. We're getting nothing but just higher taxes. We don't use a sewer system. We don't hardly even use any of the facilities. This is an example. It says your comp plan goals. You said protect and maintain the way of life.
Ma'am, your 4 minutes is up.
That's not protecting my way of life.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
And we do have one more, and it's more of a question. I'm going to read it, and I would ask, well, we'll see how the discussion goes, but if an answer can be provided to this, it would be on the streets. I would ask staff to take care of it. But it's Sherry Bolender, and her question is, if McGuire Road is to be expanded, will established homes bordering on the east lose property for the road expansion? That was the question. This would be homes in the Meadows and Prairie Meadows and include her home at the corner of McGuire and North Howell Road. So we'll see how the discussion goes, and then if we need to get back to you with an answer to that question, we will do that for you. Okay? Applicant, wish to rebut.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. While it's fresh in my mind, I will answer that question. If and when McGuire is improved, those people on the east side will not lose any property. That right-of-way has already been dedicated. When the Prairie Meadows and the Meadows subdivisions were done, all of that right-of-way was dedicated at that time. We'll be required through the annexation agreement to develop, or to dedicate, additional right-of-way on our side and build the road to city standards. So I hope that answers that question.
Thank you.
Obviously, I wrote down concerns as people were talking. Infrastructure seems to be a big one. I'm going to defer to the staff report. You have comments from your staff in the staff report about the capacity and the adequacy of existing infrastructure, sewer, water, and roads. That's in the staff report. It's been addressed by city staff, by the engineering department, et cetera. So there appears to be adequate infrastructure capacity. R1 versus R1S. So again, the comp plan designates this area as transitional, as we discussed, and that is, suitable for growth, but at what given time is basically what it says. Now, this map doesn't show it, John's does, but this is the one I have. Pleasant View is off to the left of the map. You're going to start seeing Pleasant View corridor start developing industrial commercial properties. Now, this transitional area, as John had indicated, is between that, and you can see the edge of the light red color there on Corbin Road. That's the business commercial designation in your comp plan. So you're going to start to see some of that commercial and industrial develop there, and you're going to have residential coming from this way. So we're going to eventually need to transition from the incredibly low density residential of the R1S to commercial and industrial property. So as we go that way, you're going to see traditional land planning models say that you're going to get more dense as you get closer and closer to your commercial and industrial stuff. So going from my standpoint, from R1S to R1 is actually in accordance with the comp plan and the thought process that went into it when the city redid this comp plan. And I was, I went to some of those workshops and gave my input as well when this was created as transitional. So we do feel the R1 is the appropriate zoning designation. I will say this, if it's council's pleasure to annex it with an R1S, or if you guys desire to do that, I would ask that you table this until the next meeting so that I have a chance to go back to Gordon and get him up to speed and see how he responds to that, because I don't really want to speak for him on something like that, if that's possible, if that's how you guys would like to go. But otherwise, we're requesting the R1.
Any additional questions, Drew?
Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Close the public hearing. Mr. Malloy, would you like to start?
Sure. I agree with just about everybody that spoke here tonight. That area has been traditionally low density, rural, agricultural, etc. I was very impressed that almost everybody who spoke everybody spoke is extremely reasonable. They're not opposing development outright, but asking that development be more in line with what surrounds it. I agree. I don't think R1 is appropriate right at that spot. I would support it with R1S, as the applicant has said. Would prefer we didn't take any action on that, that being the case. So I guess as it stands right now, I would be in opposition of this annexation with the R1 zone designation.
Thank you. Mr. Wolf?
Me?
Yep.
Well, I'm not even that in favor. I appreciate everybody being here. It's great to get the feedback from the people, and especially those people that are mostly impacted by this particular request. I think Mr. Flowers brought up the fact that we're not obligated to annex any property into City of Post Falls, and this would be one where I say, no, I'm not interested in annexing that particular piece of property into the city. That's why I asked the question, John, what's the big benefit? Why? I mean, that's the first thing I look at. Why should we do this? What's the big benefit to Post Falls? And really, as I read through it, I think that, John came up with some other options, but it's like to provide housing, to have housing for, well, we've got a lot of land already annexed, already within Post Falls. It's already zoned R1. We've got a lot of available property. I just don't think the timing's right on this. I really didn't like the fact that this wrapped around the Adams property. I thought that the disconnect to the road was not good. And I really feel for you folks that had to have those people trumping in your backyard. I wouldn't like that either, so.
Excuse me, ma'am, no comments, please. We asked politely. Now, please, no more comments. We're going to let everybody talk. We listen to you. Please listen to us, all right?
Sorry, I thought I was addressed.
No, I'm sorry. No. Yep, if we're going to speak, we got to be at the microphone. The public hearing's closed. Thank you.
Anyway, I appreciate the people being here, and the locals have the biggest stake in this. I would not be in favor of annexing the property.
Thank you. Councilor Thorson.
First of all, I truly respect as passionate as people are about anything having to do with annexations or zoning, that every single person who spoke was respectful. That's how everything works well, so thank you. All I can see is the maps that outline that. What we try to do here is with pockets of county. We've talked about it for decades. We have pockets of county within the city of Post Falls. And I looked at the map of that and I thought, by annexing that, we're creating a county pocket. And it just seems like we've fallen through the looking glass there. The R1S possibly, but R1 I could not support.
Thank you. Mr. Anthony.
Looking at the map also, I think I brought up earlier, I do have some concerns of the island there of Grange not being improved, and also Grange to Pleasant View not being improved. I think that could create some problems. The parks, there would be some issues crossing over to McGuire, but
I'm thinking a little bit along of Joe's thinking. I do think that that property could be developed as an R1S. What I've heard from the neighbors is most of them are pretty reasonable, that know that this probably will be developed at some time. And I've got a feeling this would come back to us again if we turned it down, but I possibly could probably support RS1 if that was the way the council went, so.
Thank you.
I'm kind of along that thinking.
Mr. Borders?
Well, I feel the same way. If we're going to annex it, I like the R1S. I think it's a good transition from the west side to the east side with the 5-acre parcels out there that people are farming. We aren't taking so much away as if we went with the R1S. I don't like the county pocket in the middle of that annexation, particularly with any improvements to be done on Grange. I think it just makes it a nightmare, in my opinion. So I would not support an R1 designation.
Ms. Wilhelm?
Well, I appreciate everyone coming out, too. I am pretty much on the same page as most of the city councilors here. I do appreciate Angela coming and speaking. I understand her situation out there on Grange, and I believe that it's forming a county pocket, as Councilor Thorson said as well. It is in the area city impact of Post Falls, and will likely someday be annexed into the city, and I wouldn't be opposed to that. However, like I was saying when I was first questioning staff about this, that I've lived out in that area a few different times in my life, and it does seem rural out there to me, and I feel like it should be kept rural, and in my mind, that's where we were always headed. And so, but that's just my memory coming back. So I would be in opposition to the Kukla and Kelly annexation, file number ANNX-0006-2021.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
May I have a second?
Second.
That's a move to reject?
I'm sorry?
So it's a move to
Yeah, it was a
reject?
move to reject, yeah.
So yes means no?
Yeah, correct. So,
So, the way I'm taking that, make
So
sure
everyone,
I'm-
yes means no.
I'm following
Yes
that
means no, yeah.
the motion is to deny the annexation,
Correct.
not the zoning.
so now it's comment time. I want to comment. Ms. Adams, if I was short, I apologize. As you may have been able to figure out, oftentimes at these meetings, we get a lot of people shouting out, and if you don't say stop, it will continue. So please accept my apology. Number one. Number two, I'm amazed that since you have that 5-acre parcel, that you showed up as neutral. And I'm going to agree with what everybody said. Everybody was extremely polite, extremely understanding. You know, when I first looked at this, I thought, R1, that's almost a moral victory anymore, because we're seeing so many requests for multifamily. So anytime I see something that's R1, I say, well, that's better than what it could have been, in my personal opinion. We talked about R1S. I remember when that discussion first came up, I was on the city council. I love large acre parcels. I'm on someone said they're on 2.5 acres, so am I. I bought it for a reason. I'm not land planners, I'm not saying our city planners, but I'm not land planners' favorite guy, because I do like larger lots. I understand if you develop on larger lots, you can eat up the available land quicker, and I understand all that, but I still like the larger lots. Comment was made when the R1 at the Meadows was first built that it won't sell, people can't afford it. Well, we've seen what happens there. And I think if it was an R1, I think a similar thing would happen. I think people would be willing to buy R1 because I think that is a desirable piece of property to have. I think it's a logical expansion eventually, but I'm going to agree with everybody and say right now my issue is timing. We've seen, as we continue to expand to the north, I've seen more reluctance on the part of council to continue to do that. I think as we tend to proceed to the west, expand to the west, it's kind of the same thing. It's out on the periphery, what has to be. If it's infill, I have a little bit different feeling. So I think it's a logical expansion. I would personally, I could live with an R1, but I would really prefer an R1S if it came to that. But to me, the issue is timing. So I'm not really surprised that I think it's going to be a unanimous vote, but I just wanted to weigh in on my thoughts as well. Roll call, please.
Anthony?
No.
No.
Oh, yes.
Yes is no.
Wolf?
You say Wolf?
Wolf.
Yes.
Wilhelm?
Yes.
Malloy?
Aye.
Borders?
Yes.
Thorson?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Next item up tonight is the Boyd annexation. And with that, I'm just waiting to see if we have a bunch of folks leaving. We'll wait just a moment.
We're reasonable people. We're reasonable people. We can listen to people.
Okay, with that, I will open the Boyd annexation. Mr. Manley.
Yes, Boyd annexation, case file ANNX5 2021. Owner, Don Boyd, applicant Ace Solution, and they are present. So you're being asked to annex approximately 12 acres of land. Would be within an infill area and designated as R1 zoning. Here's a location here. You see Greens Ferry just off to the west, Cecil Road, Bogies. It's kind of north central on that location there. So currently, large lot residential home in Kootenai County. There's no significant or topographical or vegetation matters on the site. Water provider would be Ross Point Water District, with the sewer being provided by the City of Post Falls. For a little look of the surrounding area, wasn't too long ago, this was a kind of county island finger poking in the City of Post Falls, but here recently you've seen other annexations and development in the near future, in the recent times. So you have Corbin Meadows just to the north. They're in the process of doing their development. Jacobs Run off to the west, they've recently developed. And we have Reddenley Estates to the south. So this is like centrally located. Upon subdivision, we'd be looking at connecting the road system. So at the end of the day, it would look like a master planned community. Looking at surrounding zoning, we see the yellow, that's the R1 zoning. So the proposed R1 would be consistent with the adjacent zoning in the area. Looking northeast at the project from Bogey, you see here there's the field there. Just to the west, that's that Jacobs Run, that's the development that gone in that location. Here's looking east at the project location. So zone change review criteria that the Planning and Zoning Commission looked at was, is it consistent with the future land use map, consistent with the goals and policies in the comprehensive plan, and they looked at the street classification, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses of this site, as well as any sort of geographic and natural features. The staff report goes in detail of all those matters. Looking at the land use designation, this is low density residential, so the proposed R1 is an implementing zoning district of that. Looking at policy 2, future land use mapping, designation is appropriate for the future land use map, as R1 was one of the implementing zoning districts. Looking at compatibility and land uses, I already mentioned that with the R1. There's a plan for other R1 lots in the nearby. Infrastructure and service plans, utilities and services are near and available, and that's cited in detail in the staff report. Existing and future traffic patterns, minor collector is adequate to handle the growth. The other 3 criteria is looking at commercial and high density, stating that it should be along streets with higher road classifications. That's not the case, nor is it being requested. Limited neighbor commercial and lower density is typically assigned as properties proceed further away, and that is the case here. It is proceeding, it's a little bit further away from Highway 41 and a little bit further away from Prairie or Southeast and Mullen to the south. They're not asking for industrial, so that wasn't applicable. So that's the basis for the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation for the R1 as part of the annexation. The staff report went into detail about the policies and the consistencies of the goals and policies and of the proposed annexation. Here's the agencies that were routed. See that the Post Falls Police, they were neutral. Kootenai County Fire and Rescue, neutral. DEQ provided comments regarding construction. Their main concerns is dust, debris, keeping it clean. Post Falls Highway District, no comment. And Kootenai County Community Development had no comment.
Questions, Mr. Manley?
All right.
None? Does the applicant wish to speak? Name and address for the record, please.
Do you have a PowerPoint? Do you want me to bring anything up?
Yeah, I just get that vicinity map, the first one, yeah, there.
This one?
Yeah, perfect.
That doesn't show that.
Thank you very much. My name is Nick Ebner, engineer with ACE Solutions. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council. And thank you very much, Mr. Manley, for that presentation. Yeah, as John mentioned, we're in a little bit of a county island here. We're basically surrounded by the city. We've got it to the north, south, and to the west. And so we're just looking to add to the city. One thing I'd like to point out is as we work on the subdivision plan, we're going to be providing some connectivity for the city. So not only along Bogey Drive, but we also have, you can see there in Jacobs Run, this little court here. It's called Natty Court. We'll be providing connectivity there. We will also be providing this connectivity to this road to the south, which I believe is called Renly, to a road to the north through the Corbin's Meadow subdivision, which I think is called Cocoa. And also there is another road to the east-west that you can't quite see here. It's Bunting. As Bunting goes through, it becomes Cinder on this side of Greens Ferry. So we'll be providing a lot of connectivity by the time, and some of that, you know, especially Cinder, it won't be complete until some of the neighbors all develop, but we'll be providing some connectivity. And because of that, you'll find we'll probably have a hard time reaching the full maximum allowed of 5 units per acre. So it'll be most likely a larger, less dense than the maximum allowed. So something that was mentioned during the planning and zoning is there is a water line from the Prairie Water Association that runs down through the property, more or less, actually right down the side, about right here. And we will deal with that in subdivision. We believe we can reroute it. We know we are actually working with an owner on a different project who is on the board of the Prairie Water Association, and Mr. Boyd has been on the Prairie Water Association for some time now. So we believe we can work with them as needed. So we think we can reroute it, figure out where it's going, get it in a better location if we can, and if not, we can provide an easement. And then lastly, just wanted to point out that Mr. Boyd has been a longtime member of this, or a longtime owner of this location. He's not an out-of-state developer looking to make a quick buck. He's just kind of seeing what's going on around him and says, you know, hey, I think it might be time for me to move on and develop this lot into what it needs to be, get it away from this big piece of land that I believe at one point he may have farmed, but he's no longer doing that actively. So, yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Any questions?
Just one.
Go ahead, Steve.
We get comments all the time that we have all these pieces of property that are in the city but not developed yet. So do you have any timeline on when you would start this development if it was approved?
Well, we are looking to do that soon. We have started the process for subdivision. We're still in the preliminary stages. We've sent it in for preliminary review, and I believe we may be on schedule for the planning and zoning for that in August for that. So we're looking to move fairly quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Jen. Thank you. In opposition, not wishing to speak, Harlan Schlenker. Why are you not developing infill before annexing more in? Will you guarantee it, if approved, it will be not rezoned? Does the mayor and council live near any of these annexations? Those were the same comments from the previous public hearing. So that was the only comment?
Yes.
No need to rebut. With that, I'll close the public hearing. Council. Mr. Anthony, let's start with you this time.
I look at this piece of property, it is surrounded by city on all sides, and we had discussion on it tonight on infill projects, and I think this is what we're looking at as a council, and I support this 100%. My vote would be yes.
Thank you, Mr. Borders.
I think it's a good infill project. I like the connectivity of the roads through that area, and I'd support it.
Ms. Wellham.
Same.
Sorensen. I mispronounced your name. Miss.
I'm new.
Told you I butchered names.
Yeah. I would be in support of this for those reasons too. You know, it's connect the dots. And that is infill.
Thank you. Mr. Wolf.
Well, I'll go back to my comment earlier about what's good for Post Falls, and when I look at this, it's kind of the opposite in that if we don't annex this in, it's bad for Post Falls. It's just going to be a field of weeds. It's, 12 acres. You can't really farm it necessarily, and I think it would be more of a detriment in its present state than it would be developed as the rest of the property around it, so I'd be in favor.
Mr. Malloy.
Same. It's an infill development. It connects roads, connects pedestrian facilities. It's R1, so we're not putting 3-story apartment buildings there. It matches what's around it. I think it's a no-brainer.
I would agree with all the comments made. It's, we're hearing opposition to any annexation that is not infill at this point. And I think anytime we get an opportunity to do an infill annexation, especially one with R1 zoning, and as Mr. Engineer said, that with roads and connectivity will be a lower density than what could be allowed. So I would also be in support, but I'm not going to get a chance to vote, I'm sure. So with that, I would entertain a motion.
I would move to approve the Boyd annexation file number ANNX-0005-2021.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Wolf?
Aye.
Wilhelm?
Aye.
Malloy?
Aye.
Borders?
Aye.
Thorson?
Aye.
Anthony?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda tonight is unfinished business returning ordinances, and it's the Tullamore Sports Complex mass grading recommendation to award contract.
Would you like me to set the timer?
Yeah, give them about a minute and a half.
Minute and a half, all right. There you have it, minute and a half.
Speed talking, so you get dual thing here, but I wanted to give you a quick update, a minute and a half update on before the contract comes forward. As part of our agreement with the Tullamore lands, that's the sports complex and Tullamore Park, one of the requirements, the final requirement, was that Copper Basin would remove the debris that was left over from the filling of the pit and leveling it. We delayed that general requirement because we wanted the site to settle. We also did not know what any elevations would be for, as we put the thing together, and also for the road. Well, since that time, those things have been resolved. But also in that time span, we've watched the debris pile grow. Some of it from Copper Basin, some of it from the city, a lot of it from other contractors, and it became a dumping site. That made it very difficult to determine how much of the cleanup Copper Basin should be responsible for. Also, we tried to locate some of the different contractors who dumped, and Copper Basin tried to do the same. It's hard to identify. So we started looking for other solutions. We did place on the bid spec an ad alternate for cleanup of that debris pile. We felt that would give us a better sense of what we were dealing with. And you'll see that coming forward. So right now, we're recommending that we go ahead and clean it up, and in exchange, Copper Basin will put in the parking lot for Tullamore Park, the north parking lot off of Hope Street. Legal's working right now on an addendum for that to come before you, just with timing and everything else. It got a little bit behind us. We're all kind of busy, but we don't want to delay everything. I wanted to give you a frame of reference. The low bidder on this placed that cost to clean it up at $50,000. We saw some lower, some higher on the bids, but if we look at the parking lot that we need to put in, we know from our experience that that cost of the parking lot to the city will be 3 to 4 times that cost. So we look at this as a real win for the city. But I just wanted you to be aware of what we're doing, what's going on before you consider this bid award, and also why it's, this next thing, if it's approved, would be coming forward to you later on, so.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, that was a minute and
That was like 4
0.75.
minutes.
I don't think so. It hasn't moved a second.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Robbie Quinn, Parks Planner, and I'm here seeking council's approval on 2 contracts related to the Tullamore Sports Complex mass grading project. On the July 15th meeting, or sorry, June 15th meeting, I presented, or updated you that we'd be putting this out to bid. We received bids on June 30th for this project, and in general, the scope includes clearing, sorting of debris, as Dave mentioned, setting the subgrade elevations for future development, and excavating and installing suitable fill material for future development, such as the buildings and hardscape elements. Bids were received June 30th, and the engineer's estimate on this project was $872,960. The low bid was La Riviere at $850,679.85. Our engineer, as well as the legal department, have reviewed their submittal and deemed it a low responsive bidder, and that's who we're seeking approval on this evening. We are also asking for a 5% contingency for any unforeseen issues that may come about in the total of $42,534, as a total request for construction of $893,231.85. In addition, we are also seeking approval of the construction administration and observation contract with our consultant, MTLA. And this scope, they will basically be in charge of monitoring the construction and contract documents with the project, such as submittals, material reviews, testing, and geotechnical services. And the total for that contract was $54,753.59. So both of those contracts together, we are looking for a total of $947,967.44, and this would be paid out of park impact fees. Any questions?
Questions, Robbie?
I got one.
Go ahead, Al.
Robbie, this is kind of an odd one, but I'm looking at the different bids, and Scarcella Brothers bid, in their breakout, they bid $286,000 for dust control, okay? Which was substantially, like $280,000 higher than anybody else. Mm-hmm. Did we check with them to make, because if that was a typo or an error, they would have had the lower bid.
Yeah, that would have been what TO went through when they reviewed the results.
Oh, okay.
And
So somebody checked it out.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Just seems really odd to me, but.
Yeah, well, I was surprised. Look at the high bid.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I know
it. I would entertain a motion.
I would move to approve Tullamore Sports Complex mass grading recommendation to award the contract to La Riviera for a total of $850,679.85, and to MTLA for admin and observation for $54,753.59, all with a 5% contingency. Both contracts total $947,967.44.
Second.
Motion second. Very thorough, thank you.
Wow, clearest motion we've ever had.
Further discussion? Shannon, please take the roll.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Robbie. Next item up as new business, and we have an ordinance dealing with the juvenile code update.
Move to approve the ordinance juvenile code update and on its first and only reading by title while under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Malloy.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
An ordinance of the City of Post Falls, Kootenai County, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, repealing Municipal Code Chapter 9.28 and adopting a new Chapter 9.28 to regulate offenses committed by or against juveniles, including curfew violations, failing to pick up a juvenile and running away, and providing that violations are an infraction punishable by a fine of $150, providing that remaining sections of Post Falls City Code shall remain in effect, providing for severability, providing for this ordinance to be in full force and effect from and after its passage, approval, and publication according to law.
Move to approve the ordinance juvenile code update to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number and that it be published by summary only.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Borders.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. The next ordinance is the alarm system update.
Move to place the ordinance alarm system update on its first and only reading by title only while under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Motion second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Thorson.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Wilson.
An ordinance of the City of Post Falls, Kootenai County, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, amending Post Falls City Code Section 944.020, providing that remaining sections of Post Falls City Code shall remain in effect, providing for severability, providing for this ordinance to be in full force and effect from and after its passage, approval, and publication according to law.
Move to approve the ordinance alarm system update to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number and that it be published by summary only.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Shannon, please take the roll.
Anthony.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item up is citizens' issue, and this section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the council regarding city-related issues that are not on the agenda. If anyone cares to speak, please come forward, give your name, and we have a timer. We have two discussing here.
I thought she was coming up. She said she's getting her purse. Council members, I'm Julie Hensley, 1360 East Warm Springs Avenue. I have a citizen's concern about R1 zone and how it's presented to the public when an applicant is going for higher density. R1 zoning, it's 3 to 5 units per acre. Talking with John Manley, he's in this room somewhere, you aren't going to get 5 units per acre because of the need for roads and city setbacks, and between 3 to 4 is a more realistic number. This becomes important when talking about large plots of lands, such as 240 acres. Recently, math on a large plot stated 240 acres times 5 units per acre equals 1,200 units. Changing zoning that was brought forth with the 1,400 cap would only add 200 more homes. The 1,200 homes is not realistic as it leaves for no roads. Even if you were able to put 4 homes per acre, that's 960 homes, which increases the number of homes by 440. A plot of land that was recently approved of a PUD on about 37 acres on North Place East had a density of 3.8 units per acre. And I believe only 2 of those lots met the city's regulations of 6,500 square foot lots and the length and width requirements. That's 140 homes in that area. So if you do even the 3.8 times 240, that's 912 homes. Now we're talking almost a 500 home difference. So that math is quite important. So I please request in the future that realistic math be done when looking at future zoning changes for higher density when presenting it to the public. Because the perception can be that this council is trying to deceive the public instead of serving it. Mayor brought up earlier about water and who was shut down and you haven't been. My father-in-law is serviced by Ross Point, and during the height of it, Ross Point actually shut off its services, and when called in, said that their pumps could no longer service at this time, and they were overheating and had to be shut down. So people with Ross Point actually lost water. And that's important because Ross Point is actually going to be developing a lot more homes. So just for future development note that they have actually lost water.
Well, and
I think you guys.
I have no experience with Ross
Well,
Point.
well, I know,
was-
I know that. That's why I just wanted to
I'm
bring
on
it
Ross
up.
Point, and they just built a new well, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment on that, though? Just one thing I wanted to clarify. I think the property you were talking about with the smaller lots is under a PUD, so that it
Yes.
does fall under a different criteria.
Well, yes, but even with the PUD, under a different, it's still only 3.8 units per acre. So those are even smaller than the city of Post Falls allows, and that's 3.8 units per acre. So the math of saying 5 times 9, 240, it's 1,200 homes, we're talking it would be even less. It's really, realistically, that developer would have received 850 homes. So that.
I'm not
that-
totally following your argument, so but that's fine.
My argument is they would have had a lower density of population than presented by the council.
Thank you.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilhelm? Haven't seen you for a while, sir. Welcome.
You guys are scary. Mayor, City Council, I'm Bobby Wilhelm. I live at 923 West Grange Avenue. And tonight I'm talking about a literally life and death issue. I watched a guy die on Chase Avenue the other night. If we can pop these pictures up. As Chase, right past your house, as Chase, that 3 lanes goes into 2 lanes. If she'll do another picture, it gets narrower. Okay, do another picture. It's narrower. You see right there, right? See where those 2 yellow lines are? Go ahead, go to the next one. See where those 2 yellow lines are? I think that's where the police may have marked the other night, where a motorcycle hit that and flipped. And I was there before even the cops and the ambulance. I watched him die, or he was dying. So I suggest, I'll even use my construction trailer to put some gravel there, because the way that comes like that, if you're not quite paying attention, I mean, that was only over an extra foot and it killed him. So I believe, I know that's the railroad, obviously. I don't know if Post Falls handles that, but something needs to be done right there.
Thank you, sir. Do we have to work with Railroad on that?
I'll get with Rob and Bill, and we'll send someone out
Okay.
to look at it.
Okay.
Thanks, Bob. Anyone else? Administrative and staff reports. We have the state of the city's fleet. You have a voice tonight?
I haven't spoken in 2 hours, so I'm hoping to.
Well, Ross is coming up. I wanted to give you a quick update. A couple months ago, we came to you and asked the council to order mediation in the North Shore PUD development. Mediation was held a couple of weeks ago. After some back and forth, they ultimately were not able to come to a mutually acceptable solution. So we're working on scheduling the appeal hearing before the council. It'll be in the next couple of months. So,
thank you. Ross?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm glad to have a voice and back here. I come to you tonight to just give you an update on our fleet. We've recently got a sweeper, so I thank you for that. It actually was delivered yesterday. But there's more to our fleet than just the asks that we come to you. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a background on where we're at with our fleet. And I hope to do this on an annual basis, just give you a feel for what we're doing.
Ross, can I interrupt you for just a second?
Certainly.
Can you pull the mic over? I think Carrie and I are having a hard time hearing you.
Or possibly kneel down, you're too tall.
Okay, so
Much better.
I'm trying to give you some information on how we maintain our fleet. As you can see, the budget that we had for this year was $735,500. That's a little bit misleading because that also includes replacement funds. So each year it changes what we ask for. So the numbers here, the 2019, 20, and 21 numbers are more reflective without the actual funds for replacement vehicles. So it does fluctuate throughout the year or through the different years. And then the pie chart shows actually where those funds go in a broader spectrum. 64% go to salaries and benefits for staff, and only 36% actually go towards the actual resources, the fleet resources we have. We have, as far as staffing for maintaining our fleet, we have 1 fleet supervisor and 3 mechanics, 2 of which are assigned to the general fleet and 1 to the police department itself. His name's Darren. He pretty much stays at police department fleet for the entire year. We only pull him out in case there's a major problem that we need an extra hand, which is maybe once or twice a day, one or 2 days out of the year. Funding for our fleet is done through the general fund, and it does include some funding from the PD and utility as we oversee some of their vehicles as well. They supplement some of that as well. But it does, the funding does help us with all of our vehicles and heavy equipment, trailers, attachments, tractors, you name it. We do most of the maintenance in-house. There are occasions when we can't physically do it. We don't have the tooling to do it. Maybe we don't have the expertise to do it, or even the infrastructure, cranes or something to lift something and do it safely. So we will send that stuff out to be done. And we use our preventive maintenance program allows us to keep up with most of our equipment. Now, when I go through all of this is only talking about our fleet with regard to our rolling stock from here on out, and it does not include the police department. We track all the maintenance that's done to our vehicles in a software called iWorks. So we have the data that shows everything that's done to these pieces of equipment and vehicles. And we can see it helps us decide when a vehicle is ready to be replaced as well. If we put too much money into it, everything along those lines to help us make those decisions. On the inventory itself, 368 total pieces, including vehicles and equipment. Remember, that has no police department pieces in it. Only 83 of those are vehicles, and so 285 are equipment. With the replacement fund that's dedicated to help turn those pieces over when they reach the end of their lifespan, only the vehicles and equipment that we've purchased recently, and I'm struggling to remember how long ago the replacement fund was implemented. Maybe 5 years, somewhere in on that line. But
yeah, probably somewhere along those lines, because it was after I came over to city administrator.
okay, so long before I was here. But the the funding is only for those vehicles that have been replaced in that time frame. So vehicles and equipment that have been here for 10 years longer, they've never paid into that. So they're sitting there, and when they need to be replaced, that's when we come to you to ask for those funds. We don't have any funds that have been paying into it. Here's some numbers on the age of our fleet. Remember, this is just looking at our rolling stock. So the work trucks are classified as trucks that have contractor bodies on them. So they have a dump bed or a lot of boxes on them, extras that can actually add up to quite a bit. They're 11 years on average old, which is pushing the limit of a truck in a typical city fleet. Dump trucks, they're 15 years. A light-duty passenger vehicle is in roughly 7 years, which is actually pretty average for a city fleet. And pickup trucks, looks like it's 9 years. So that's getting up there towards the upper end of the lifespan. I would say 10 years is probably what you're looking at for a good return on investment to get some of that money back. Cost to replace these vehicles has gone up. And when we look at requesting money for the next year's budget to replace certain vehicles, we have to look ahead and try and estimate what costs are going to be like the following year, and they always change. So it's hard to do that. A dump truck with a plow, set up for a plow, is $220,000. It's hard to do that with the replacement budget that we have, knowing that we have a number of them that need to be replaced, and trying to do that. If, let's say, I have 5 of them that need to be replaced right now, I can't do 5, come to you right now and ask for over $1 million for those. We just don't have the funds to do that. So we're trying to stretch them out as best we can. This is an interesting slide that I just got the information off of iWorks, but over the last 5 years, we've brought 21 new vehicles into the fleet. So these are not replacements, these are actually new additional vehicles. So that's a 34% increase to our rolling fleet, which is actually pretty substantial in 5 years. So I thought I wanted to give you some updates so you can be aware of what we're dealing with. That's a picture of the new sweeper that was delivered yesterday.
Does it work?
It's a great question. We have not driven it. We have operator training coming hopefully next week, as well as mechanical training on it. So we don't want to screw it up before we get in there.
This presentation, Ross and John will send it out to mayor, council, and department heads too, so you'll have it.
Good. Sure. Any questions, Ross?
Very informative.
Appreciate it.
It's amazing how many pieces of equipment you need.
Yeah.
And I know there's no excess or frivolent pieces out there, so it is surprising. So thanks for your work and for the information. Mayor and council comments. I don't think I have any tonight. No.
I just had a question about the workshop or whatever was held last night at the dog park, how that went. I mean, we've seen a couple of emails, and we got a letter. I got some other feedback that was all positive, but what'd you find out last night?
Yeah. First of all, we always, as part of our process when we're doing what we consider a major park renovation or putting in a new park, we actually go on site. We do put a sandwich board up letting people know. In this case, we also contacted HOA to let them know, and then we had it on the city website. For most of those, the feedback we get really is we let them know what we're putting in there, and then we ask for feedback on those designs so we can tweak it and try and come up with the best product. We had about 20 people there last night. Half of those were in opposition to a dog park or any improvement. We had 3 people that were for the dog park, and we had neutral. It wasn't just the dog park, it's also the playground renovation. So was it something we weren't expecting? It's normal. Usually we get, the people that come out are the ones who have concerns. If you look back at Chase Park, that was an issue of putting in that park. I mean, so the feedback, we will go back into the Park and Rec Commission. They're going to get it this next week. We will take the suggestions that we've had. We'll listen to the comments. We keep track of all of it, and we'll see what can we do that meets some of their concerns and addresses some of it, but also what provides that needed amenity. The hard part is what we learned last night is a lot of people, it's their first taste in it. There's a development that just went in the last couple of years to the east of it. That's where a number of the people came from. We've been working on this for quite a few years. So at times the city said you don't do enough planning to address growth. You don't deal with that. Well, it takes time. So we're balancing that out. We will go back and tweak it, and then the Park and Rec Commission will probably do one more viewing of it and allow for more public comment. So
Okay.
was it all positive? No. Was it all negative? No. It's what we've found with just about every project. I was kind of joking today that I remember when we put in Hildy Kellogg Park, I actually had one of the residents who put her kids in front of the bulldozer when they were taking out the trees. So, and now that's a popular park, and we didn't hit the kids. So,
God, and I didn't get a picture of that. I had a question for
Just one comment, if I could maybe just add to Dave's, that him and Robbie, though, did pass out dots so the neighborhood people could pick. They had 3 proposals for the neighborhood playground improvements. And even the people that weren't excited about the dog park took part and put dots on what pieces of playground equipment that they preferred. So I think it's just not the dog park, but they're getting a new playground too, so they did take part in.
Parking.
Sure.
So the dog park is going to go in Singing Hills.
That was a recommendation of the Park and Rec Commission. That's what staff has looked at. Our ultimate, we would love to have done behind Yokes. We just have not been able to work a deal out with the Department of Transportation. But we're still hopeful. But it came to a certain point where we just said we have to do that, moving forward. We've also looked at the Cecil property, but we're looking at all that frontage cost that has to be improved. So we have so much money that's available. If we pull away from this, or add more money to another site, it's going to cost either Black Bay, the Tullamore stuff, or we come back to you for general fund dollars. So we have looked at different sites. It's just what can we afford?
Yeah, I guess I was just wondering what the process was, because smack in the middle of Singing Hills, when I think of a dog park, I think of the impact to a specific neighborhood as opposed to something that is off.
Ultimately, we'd like to see probably 4 parks spread throughout the city, probably a couple that are in more visible commercial areas. But we've also looked at those properties, and if you can even find them, they're so far out of our price range that it's what we can't afford it. So.
Okay, I'm just wondering where it is in the process, so it's not necessarily.
Linda.
Well,
I thought you just said, maybe I heard you wrong, that that's been in the planning for years. And so if it's been in the planning for years, why did we just hear about it, that it was going to be at Singing Hills a few weeks ago? I didn't hear about this years ago, I guess. Maybe I missed something, but because when we saw the picture that I believe Robbie brought forward for the consulting fee a couple weeks ago, I was very surprised at where it was. So have you been planning on doing it there for years? And
we have listed it out as one of our sites. We have a number of sites that were pushed out, probably 5.
But where
to
is
8.
that for us to see? Do we see that?
I can provide it to you.
No,
folks.
I'm not asking just for me, Dave. I'm asking for the public. Would the public have seen that you've been planning on that for years? Because I think that might have made a little bit of a difference in would the people have actually built their houses there? There's brand-new houses right up against there. And would they actually have done that? That's just my question. I just have a question.
No, it's not on the website. We talk about dog parks in our Mets plan. We didn't identify specific, so we could have done a better job on that. We've been putting all our energy in really trying to get the Yoke site, and we've worked very hard on that. And when you finally realize that you can't provide that, you go to your next item on the list.
I've seen, I think I was telling Councilor Wilhelm earlier, I've seen a dog park. It's not in this town, but in an area, it's a well-established neighborhood that has a dog park, has a commercial node too. The neighborhood, we talked about commercial nodes with an ice cream shop or a coffee shop, et cetera. But there is a dog park right in the middle of it. And I've been back there probably 4 or 5 times, and it's almost a gathering place. I can understand what people may or may not like it, but it's actually almost a gathering spot for them too. They go visit and let their dogs run. So it's I think if people are not dog people, I can't see where they'd be very supportive of it. But I agree with Councilor Wilhelm. If, did the people know, and is it going to be a change for them?
Well, the people that asked me about it have dogs, but they were just surprised, to hear about it. Anyway, that's just.
We'll see how it moves forward.
Yeah.
So I guess.
Add one thing, not for Dave, if Dave's done.
Yeah. Okay. I guess follow up. Right now, that was a site that was agreed upon with Park and Rec Commission. It is our plan to go forward with it, but if this next review at the Park and Rec Commission, they decide, no, we're not going to do it, then yes, that would be pulled back, but,
Keep us posted.
yeah.
Good. Thank you, Dave. Gary?
Well, I would like to thank our city clerk, Shannon Howard, for spending her birthday here at a city council meeting.
What else would she rather do?
I know, so happy birthday, and thank you.
And as a present, we are not going to sing.
And we're not going to have executive session.
Yeah, no executive session.
There's no cake, oh,
I-
no.
I have
go
something,
ahead.
Mayor, if I could. And I'm going to read what I have written because I'm going to give it to the city clerk and have it entered into the record for legal reasons. So, bear with me. I would like to comment on two things tonight. With regard to the North Placed East rezone, I would like to take a moment and stand for the truth and also share my gratitude. First of all, I am an independent contractor with a real estate broker's license at Coldwell Banker Schneidmiller Realty, owned by Mark Johnson and Gary Schneidmiller. My license has been there for 25 years. I do not work for Greenstone. I have never worked for Greenstone or any other single-family developer in any subdivision. I did not find out that Gary Schneidmiller owned any part of Greenstone Kootenai until Friday, July 9th. I had to investigate that to find that out, which would have been an ex parte communication and not legal had I asked for that information prior to our hearing on July 6th. Frankly, I had no reason to ask. It never entered my mind. That being said, had I known Gary owned part of that company, I would have disclosed that prior to the hearing. I still would have had no conflict of interest. I gain nothing from what he owns. I have no idea what Gary Schneidmiller owns or doesn't own, and it is none of my business. I do not talk to him or anyone else about the city of Post Falls business. I make my decisions on city council based on what I feel is best for the community and what is lawful in the codes and nothing other than that. Lastly, I would like to take a moment and express my gratitude to the citizens of Post Falls. As some of you have known, I have been vilified, bullied, falsely accused by others via social media, text, websites, print, and gossip. I want to thank all of the individuals in our community who have reached out to me in the past 2 weeks and have offered their love and support in response to these unseemly and false attacks. I have been quite moved by all the support and encouragement I have received from so many in our community. It reminds me why I love Post Falls and why it's worth it to me to contribute my time and energy to be of service to the people I respect so much. Thank you all for your kindness and support. It means a lot to me. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Linda. Any other comments? We do not need an executive session, so the next motion is?
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.